Have you ever wondered what it feels like to be remembered as the villain of history? Not misunderstood, not complicated, just evil. For 2,000 years, one name has carried that weight. Judas. In churches, in films, in sermons, he is the traitor, the greedy disciple, the one who sold Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. But here's the question no one lingers on long enough. If Judas' betrayal was necessary for Jesus' crucifixion, and the crucifixion was necessary for salvation, then wasn't Judas essential to the story? And if he was essential, was he acting against God's plan or fulfilling it? This is where the story becomes uncomfortable. Because what we were taught in Sunday school was simple. Judas bad, Jesus good. End of discussion. But the text itself raises deeper questions. Let's slow down and revisit the narrative. Judas Iscariot was not an outsider. He was chosen, personally selected by Jesus as one of the 12 disciples. He walked with him, ate with him, learned from him, witnessed miracles firsthand. This wasn't a distant skeptic. This was an insider. According to the Gospels, Gospel of Matthew, Gospel of Mark, Gospel of Luke, and Gospel of John, Judas agrees to betray Jesus to the religious authorities for 30 pieces of silver. But here's where things get layered. In one account, Satan enters Judas. In another, Judas acts after being rebuked. In another, the betrayal appears almost anticipated. Jesus predicts it. He announces at the Last Supper that one of the 12 will betray him. He even identifies Judas indirectly. And in the Gospel of John, Jesus hands Judas his bread and says, "What you are about to do, do quickly. Do quickly." That doesn't sound like someone trying to stop a crime. It sounds like someone allowing it, or even directing it. So here's the logical tension. If Jesus is divine and knows the future, if his death is the central mission, if prophecy must be fulfilled, then Judas's betrayal is not an accident. It's a requirement. Without betrayal, there is no arrest. Without arrest, no crucifixion. Without crucifixion, no resurrection story. So was Judas sabotaging salvation or enabling it? The gospel writers even connect Judas to prophecy, referencing Psalms about a close friend who would betray. Which raises another question. If prophecy foretold it, was Judas free to choose otherwise? Could he have woken up that morning and decided not to betray Jesus? Or was he moving inside a script already written? If he had refused, would salvation have failed? And if salvation could not fail, was Judas's role predetermined? Now think about this. Christian theology teaches that Jesus' death was part of God's redemptive plan from the beginning. Some interpretations even suggest it was foreknown before creation. If that's true, then someone had to play the betrayer. Someone had to hand Jesus over. And history remembers that someone as eternally cursed. But is that justice? If a soldier in a play follows the script, we don't blame him for the tragedy written into the story. So why is Judas treated differently? In the Gospel of Matthew, Judas later feels remorse. He returns the silver. He confesses, "I have sinned, for I have betrayed innocent blood." This isn't a cartoon villain twirling his mustache. This is a man overwhelmed with guilt, and then he dies tragically. The story doesn't celebrate his punishment. It feels sorrowful, even tragic. Some early Christian groups wrestled deeply with Judas' role. There was even a controversial ancient text known as the Gospel of Judas, which portrays Judas not as a villain, but as the only disciple who truly understood Jesus' mission, the only one willing to do what had to be done. That view was rejected by mainstream Christianity. But its existence tells us something important. The early church itself struggled with this character, because logically the story is complicated. If Judas acts freely, then he bears moral responsibility. But if his action fulfills divine necessity, then responsibility becomes murky. Can someone be condemned for fulfilling prophecy? Can someone be punished for advancing God's plan? These aren't easy questions. They cut to the heart of free will, destiny, justice, and mercy. And then there's another layer. Why 30 pieces of silver? It's a relatively small amount. It's not the fortune we often imagine. Was greed truly the motivation, or disappointment? Some scholars suggest Judas may have expected Jesus to establish a political kingdom to overthrow Roman rule. When that didn't happen, perhaps frustration grew. If Judas believed forcing a confrontation would trigger divine intervention, his betrayal might not have been hatred, but misguided urgency. Human motives are rarely simple. We reduce Judas to a single trait, traitor. But human beings are rarely one-dimensional. Fear, confusion, pressure, ideological disillusionment, it's all possible. And here's the deeper question for us today. Why do we need Judas to be purely evil? Is it easier to preserve the story if one character absorbs all the blame? Someone must carry the darkness so the light shines brighter? The narrative tension works powerfully when good and evil are clearly separated. But real life is rarely that clean. The betrayal leads to the crucifixion. The crucifixion leads to what Christians call redemption. So in the strange logic of the story, the worst act becomes the doorway to salvation, which raises one final haunting question. If Judas had not betrayed Jesus, would we call him faithful? Would we call him the disciple who prevented salvation? That thought alone reframes everything.
Oh, this doesn't mean the story collapses, it means it deepens.
It means it forces us to wrestle with uncomfortable paradoxes. Maybe Judas represents more than betrayal. Maybe he represents the human struggle between destiny and choice, between fear and faith, between playing a role and understanding its consequences. And perhaps the story endures precisely because it refuses to resolve neatly. Was Judas damned? Some Christian traditions believe so. Others leave his fate in mystery. The text itself never explicitly describes eternal punishment for him. It tells us he regretted. It tells us he suffered. It tells us he died. But it leaves the final verdict unstated. And maybe that silence is intentional, because the story of Judas isn't just about him. It's about us. It's about moments when we act against what we believe, about the tension between our choices and larger forces at work, about guilt, about responsibility, about whether redemption is truly universal or selective. So next time you hear the name Judas, pause. Instead of seeing only the villain, ask the harder question, what if his role was tragically necessary? And if it was necessary, what does that say about blame? If this exploration challenged the way you've always understood the story, take a moment to like this video. It helps more people encounter deeper conversations like this one. And if you want more thoughtful, investigative documentaries that explore the hidden tensions inside biblical narratives, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because sometimes the most powerful questions aren't the ones we were taught to ask. They're the ones we were told never to. And the story of Judas might be one of them.